Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being and attending the first SCWA monthly meeting of the year, this January meeting, and what an exciting year it will be for us all. We've all made it this far, so we certainly will make it further, and it, like last year for us, was a great explosion of writing, and so many of us published. We have members on 3 continents now, and it's just been a fun experience for us as writers with this organization. As you know, SCWA is the oldest writer organization in Orange County and perhaps in Southern California. It's been here since 1981, before many of us were born. And it's just produced so many writers, best-selling writers, and presented so many writers, and from Ray Bradbury on, you know, so many different people. So we thank you for being a part of us and hope if you're not a member that you would consider joining, because we feel we have endowed and broadened the wonderful talents of many writers in not only Orange County, but all over the country. So we have speakers that come from all over the country. Thank you again for being here. And our speaker today, you'll really enjoy. Maddie will introduce her to you.
Thank you, Larry, our illustrious president, Lorenzo Boricelli. I'm Maddie Margarita, and I have the honor of introducing our speaker today. I've spent some time with Tanya in the past, which is why I'm excited to be able to introduce her today. She is an amazing writer, an amazing speaker, and an amazing person all the way around. So that was my personal introduction. So her regular bio goes something like this. In her memoir, Phenomenal Beauty, It's a Journey, Not a Destination, Tanya Hutchison speaks with candor and conviction as she shares with her readers intimate details of how she overcame many challenges to become the beautiful woman she is today. During her reign as Mrs. California International, Tanya wrote her first memoir. She later gained notoriety when she became a contributing author for the popular Chicken Soup for the Soul book series. A graduate of Western Michigan University, Tanya has received many accolades and titles over the years, including former Star Search champion television spokesmodel, Los Angeles Raiders cheerleader, and winner of She's Got the Look reality TV series. So she's got quite a history and a background, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about writing a memoir that you can't put down. Welcome, Tanya.
Hello, good morning, or afternoon, depending upon where you are logging in from. Is that Dot who has Yoda over there? I was Yoda one Halloween. It was actually Magic Johnson and his wife Cookie threw this masquerade kind of party, and I was pregnant at the time. I have 5 adult kids now, but I wanted to go but didn't feel like dressing up, and I went as Yoda. So anyway, Yoda's my buddy. So hello, Dot, or AKA Yoda. So I'm assuming that most of you, or maybe I shouldn't assume, are either writers or some way connected to writing, or perhaps you're readers. Has anybody on this call written a memoir yet? Marjorie? Okay, awesome. And then I see Diana. So you probably can teach me a few things, but I guess we really want to talk about how to write a memoir that readers won't put down. Let's just, for those that aren't familiar with memoirs, let's just talk a little bit about a memoir. So those that have not written a memoir, can you share? I like interaction, so I'm going to start with, give me kind of your idea of what a memoir is. And don't forget to unmute yourself. Anybody?
Well, a tale about the experiences of your life and how not only, well, to some people it's just important to family, but that may have an effect on others who read it.
Awesome. Anybody else? Is that you, Debbie? No? She's got her hand up. Unmute yourself, Debbie.
Just a series of stories of your own journey that other people can, maybe who know you or don't, can understand how you got to where you are, and that it wasn't simple or gifted or, you know, obvious that it was going to be like that from birth, because none of us have a straight line in our story.
Awesome. Anybody else?
Hi, Tanya. This is Leslie Peterson. I'm not on camera this morning.
Hey, Leslie. Thanks
hi.
for joining us.
Oh, sure. I'm hoping to pick up some really good tips. I am working on a memoir now, but it's a little bit different because it's part of a multi-point of view novel I'm working on, and one point of view is an epistolary format, and she's writing her memoir. So it's a memoir, but it's a fiction memoir.
Okay.
And yeah, but I'm still looking for some really good tips, especially when you're, trying to be in a scene and a story you're telling, but also you want to add that additional author information because you are kind of talking in hindsight about your life. And and I find that's kind of an area I struggle with in her writing her memoir. So I'll be curious to see what you have to say about that.
Okay. Anybody else? So a memoir really can be a lot of different things, right? It can be a journey through someone's life. It's insight into their mindset at a particular time. It could be comfort to someone's experience that's very similar to the writer's. But most importantly, we want it to be very inspirational for those that are seeking something more. Memoirs, when you're writing them, even though it's, well, let me ask you guys this, what's the difference between, or whether the types of memoirs? Do you know of the different types, or how is a memoir different from an autobiography or a biography? Anybody want to share that before I get into it?
I always thought it was the same. I might be wrong, but I always thought that they were pretty much interchangeable words.
They pretty much are the same. An autobiography, it is from the first person's point of view. Usually a biography is the third person. There's someone that's writing about a lot of celebrities and famous people. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I thought an autobiography would be a prominent person, to make their autobiography so people could see it and hear it of decision making and all that. Or a memoir seems it would be more personal.
And in autobiography, it's written in the first person, but it's also the author kind of retelling their life story in the first person. It's making the author kind of the main character of the story. Whereas when we get to a memoir, it's nonfiction. It can be a daunting task, right? Because as the author, you have a responsibility to tell a true story, but you've got to share the accurate facts while also making that experience enjoyable to the reader. So as you're thinking of writing your memoir, you want to think in terms of creativity. You want to think in terms of, do I want it to be more kind of autobiographical, or do I want each character to be its own distinct character within the memoir? A memoir can also, I guess I want to say, it's more of a collection of memories that someone writes about his or her own life to specific moments or experiences, as you said. It can be public or private, or it could be a combination of the both. But basically, a memoir is understood as factual, and as factual to your memory as possible. So it's kind of a historical account of events or things. Sometimes there's an entire timeline of a person's life in the memoir, or you can, most memoirs that I've seen or read, or a lot of people write, they kind of focus on one aspect. So it could be, say, for example, addiction, or somebody will write about parenting. You can write about being adolescent, about disease, about your faith. So there can be a specific aspect, but you kind of give an overview, and it focuses a lot on your feelings, right? As you're retelling the facts, but it's focusing on your feelings and kind of how those feelings affected you. So I guess telling the story should be factual, but it also should be cohesive. So it shouldn't be about this is the fact, this is the fact, but kind of blended in. And you don't want a voice that simply relates the facts to the readers over and over. You want a voice that shows the reader what's going on. You want to put the reader in your room so they're getting an experience like they're right there with you. And I guess because I'm a very feely person, I like not to be understood. My memoir came about not because I thought I had such a great idea. Mine was about beauty specifically, but not in comparing my physical beauty and the modeling industry and experience of all the things that I had accomplished that way, from achieving it, from being a beautiful young lady. I wanted always for somebody to know my inner beauty, which was always overlooked. And people always assumed that I had a golden spoon because of the accomplishments or things or places that I would end up in, the people that I would meet. But what they didn't know was my backstory. And so as I would slowly over time share my life story and my journey of how it all began, people would say, oh my God, you should write a book. Oh my God, you should write a book. And I heard it enough that I thought maybe I should try to put it, but where do you really start with a memoir, right? So how do you even start? And I would like to say that you can start it a lot of different ways to engage your reader. You can do something shocking and tell that. I'm going to ask you, you can do something humorous. You can tell a joke. You can lead them in that. It could be dramatic. It could be literary. It could be plain spoken. It could be short. But what you want it to be, and when you want to start, I would say think about things like make them wonder, make them smile, remember an incident. You want to make them worry. You want some kind of emotion. Are they rolling their eyes when they're reading it? Like, oh, really? And then you're taking them to something else. Make them wish they were there, or make them wish they were not there, depending upon what you're writing. But have a realization. So the memoir that I wrote, it was from a beauty pageant experience. I had won Mrs. California International. I represented and reigned in the state of California. I was real confident based upon where I was going next. I got to the national competition, competing with women from all over various places and states. And for the first time in my life, I did not even make the cut. And this has never happened to me. And at this point, I'm 45 years of age. I'm in a Mrs. Competition. I've been married. I've got 5 children. So I'm thinking I've got something to offer. I think that I would be a benefit to the organization and where I've come from. First time on stage. So I'm so confident that they're going to count down top 15, top 5, top this. So they're counting down the top 15. They got to the last spot, right? And I just knew, oh, they saved the best for last. I'm on stage. I'm looking fabulous. I've starved myself for about 9 months with the training and all that's put into it. And I just knew that this was my moment. And guess what? That last name called, I did not make the top 15. I was like shocked. In my mind, of course, you got to save face. I'm thinking, did they make a mistake? Did they read the thing? Like looking who they called and who's left back here. I'm like, I don't belong in this back row, right? Like, what is up with them? And so from that experience to not making that cut to go on, there's emotions and things, right, that you get caught up in. So my memoir began on a plane ride back home where things in my head began to, and for me, it was more of, and I don't want to just go into talking about me, but I'm kind of leading into how I started and kind of giving you some ideas of how you can start your memoir. So for me on the plane ride, I had a plethora of emotions, like, and I didn't ask, what did I do wrong? Because in my heart, and I don't want this to sound arrogant, I was shocked that I didn't make it, But at that point, I was okay because when I went down my list of what I had been taught, what I learned, I felt that I had done everything that I needed to do to win that title. And because I didn't, in my mind, I was okay with not placing, but it made me think about why I didn't. And so at that point, I began to go inward, to think about my childhood experience, to think about things that I had overcome, to think about my life and why and how I had gotten to that point. For years, I never even wanted to be in a beauty pageant, but people kept telling me and egging me on and saying I should. For years, I produced the Miss California, Miss Teen, Miss USA. I was the producer for Miss South Orange County for a number of years. I brought young girls in, I groomed them, I taught them confidence and self-esteem. I groomed, so I felt like surely I could win a pageant, right? And so during this experience, and it's interesting because Donald Trump was actually, he bought the Miss Universe pageant organization and he became my boss. And that was the last year that I produced beauty pageants for the Miss Universe pageant system as Miss California, Miss Teen USA, because I felt the beauty pageant Miss Universe system had changed and I didn't like the direction that it was going in. So I resigned at that point. But now I'm feeling I'm not connected in that way. It's time for me to step up in what I believe. And I felt at that point I had a story that I wanted to tell. I had finally come to a point where I had gained confidence in my family dysfunction. I had gained confidence in all the things that held me back. I had gained confidence in not internally feeling physically beautiful, even though I was in the modeling industry for over 30 years. I was a cheerleader for the Raiders. I'd won reality shows. For me, internally, it was a beauty journey of shedding a lot of things. So on that plane ride back home, and for the first time at the age of 45, I'm on stage feeling good about my body after birthing 5 children, for getting in shape. I felt good about where I was and had I accomplished. So on that plane ride home, I started to think, like, I felt bad for the sponsors that I promised I was bringing the trophy home. I felt like I was going back to Orange County with nothing to show. I felt like I had let people down that had invested in my training for 9 months, the sponsorships, the designers that provided me with gowns, all the grooming products. I felt like I had let them down, right? And I came to grips with it. So my memoir leads in with telling everything that I had done to prepare for this pageant, from the training to the hard work, to the raising the money, to the sponsorship, to all that, right? So as I'm thinking, all that I did, I'm putting it out there, right? It's like, you'll be shocked at some of the stuff that I did and some of the things people told me to do, but I was willing to leave no stone unturned. But then what I started out was, what in your life? So I kind of started with a question after telling them where I was and what had happened and what I didn't get. I asked the readers, what in your life have you felt that you deserve that you didn't get, right? So then I started to talk about, what about job promotions, where you felt that you deserved a certain position that you didn't get? Maybe it was a man that you wanted or a woman that you didn't get and lost it to somebody else. Maybe life had happened where there was something that you had planned for and it let you down. So I was trying to engage the readers, and that's the point I want to talk about. You want to be engaging to hook them in. So I left it broad, but threw out some things to begin to get them to think. And I asked them, how did that make you feel? What place did it take you to? And then where did you go from there? And so then that's where I set that platform in the beginning. So as I talked about being engaging, you want the readers in that engagement. If you can get them engaged, that's half the point. Let me ask you guys, have you ever picked up a book and started to read it, but then never finished? Has anyone here got a book, started? Okay, so George, you raised your hand first. What was it about that book that you put down and didn't pick up again? Unmute yourself, George. You're still muted.
That's all
Here's
right.
that well.
There you
Okay.
go, George. Okay.
Soldiers' memoirs tend to be very dull books, except the one written by General MacArthur was actually a good writer. Personal Memoirs of Ulysses S. Grant, that book was just so dull. I don't think I got more than one chapter.
And so when you read the back, you know how it kind of gives you an overview? Did you feel from what you read, the promo piece, that it would have been engaging for you? Or what was it about you that you felt, oh, let me read this? Was everybody else reading it and you thought, let me try it so you can be in a conversation? Like, what was it about that particular
That was a
book?
long time ago. I was in junior high school at the time, and
Okay.
I found the 2 volumes in the local library. Highly technical, like the general himself before he became president, and you know, a lot full of a lot of military technology, which I didn't understand. So, and after I got into it just a little bit, I thought, this is 2 volumes, several hundred pages. There's no way I'm going to get through this thing. I'm just a junior high school student.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that. Anybody else? Who else raised their hand? You picked up a book. Okay, Jamie.
Right, I can't remember the title, but I just remember it was a book where it started out really good. I felt like I is someone I could relate to, but it never got past that point. After by the 12th chapter, I just felt like I didn't know where she was going. She's like never went past the introduction, and so I just kind of lost interest in my relationship with her.
Okay. You mentioned something key, relationship.
Mhm.
Anybody else? Debbie? And then Tanya, I saw your hand. Debbie?
Yeah, I started a book, and it was a fiction of a time period, and it was supposed to be white women that were held in were put away in a sane asylum because they didn't fit the norm, and they were supposedly shipped to these Indian tribes so that they could intermarry and become therefore join the two sides instead of having this division. Okay, but there were too many things that were illogical, like that they were all given pencils and paper, as they're traveling on a train. There were things that just didn't make any sense. And so it wasn't, even as a fiction, it didn't follow, they were trying to present a real possibility, and there were too many holes in it like that. And I just got tired of the nonsensical part that they put to it. So it was no longer of interest.
Okay. Tanya, you had your.
Yes, I was reading a very, very popular memoir that was very long. And I think I stopped reading it because even though I enjoyed it, it was almost too much. And it felt like, you have a friend that you talk with and you enjoy time with them, but you don't call them because you're like, oh, I'm going to be on the phone for a long time with her. I better wait till I have time. And then you just keep putting it off, and then you never end up calling again. And that's
Right.
kind of like how it felt.
Anybody else want to share before we move on? So memoirs are, oh, go ahead. Who was
So I
that?
was going to say, I was reading one of the popular presidential biographies, and also I was reading one about some part of movie history. And, there were so many characters, it just became too tedious to keep track of them, so I stopped.
Mm-hmm. Memoirs are both intimate and they're also all-encompassing, right? In telling the story, the author is often speaking to a vast audience. So unlike usually when you're writing books, they ask you who's your target market or who's your audience, what's the age range. With a memoir, and when I'm thinking of the one, instead of mine having one aspect, mine had like a lot of different. I was like all over the place. And because I had never written one, I'm like, how do you start? And even though there are moments in time, I wanted it to kind of be chronological. I wanted it to start from when I was a child. So that moment of beginning to engage the audience with putting it on them so that they can relate to my experience of not getting what I got, I immediately jumped into the next chapter to explain my series of unfortunate events. That's what I call the chapter. And with that series of unfortunate events, I began to give an overview of my role models. And these were my family members, who all were characters, like key people. But I told, even with the dysfunction that I had, and when I say dysfunction, you know, they say we all have some dysfunction, but my memoir is based on truth, but yet people are like, that could not have really happened, right? So I'm telling you about my mother, who's one of 10 children, and how my mother, because my memoir is about women, it's about my mother specifically, it's about relationships. And Jamie mentioned a key point. I wanted to build a relationship with my audience to engage them so they wouldn't put me down and they'd let me be their friend to get through it. And so I had to set the stage. And so I'm going to challenge you when you're writing your memoir. I'm going to ask you, if people know you and they're reading your memoir, will they be engaged because you're already sharing what they probably already know about you? Or are you brave and bold enough to go one step beyond to really uncover some key things that they would be shocked to know? So friends of mine that read this memoir, they were totally shocked because they didn't know that my mother was never married. My mother had 7 children. We all have a different father. Imagine that drama. My mother was a drug addict my entire life, in and out of prison. My mother had me in the backseat of a police car. So when you read my birth certificate, it says, instead of a hospital, like probably most of you, mine says police car, right? And it never even dawned on me that that was on there until I think I was applying for a, maybe a passport or something, or maybe a job where they needed to know those facts. And then I happened to see that. So for me, my story began to unfold because I had to reveal some things in order to explain what had happened to me, why I ran away from home at the age of 13 and never returned, how I ended up in college at the age of 16, how I graduated from high school at the age of 15, how I aborted a baby while I was a senior in high school and why I did it and what that was like, and the relationship that I built with the nurse that was in the hospital, and how I lied to get the birth certificates and the things that I needed to go in to have this abortion. So my life began to unfold, but because I'm now 45 years of age, I'm almost 60 now, so that's when I wrote that. I had to, for the first time, tell my truth. And for the first time, I wasn't embarrassed to tell the truth. I used to try to cover up. I didn't want anybody to know. I didn't know who my father was until I saw the movie Roots and decided that I wanted to trace my history, because the family that adopted me was nothing like my person. So I'm thinking, I must be different. Where's the father? Where's the other side of my family? And so because I became curious, I began to research, and I found my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, and then which led me to my father, found out he was an only child, uncovered some more family members. So on this journey, I'm learning a lot about me. I'm learning a lot more about my mother. I talk about being molested, where for years I was wow, is it already 10:40? I was timing myself, so I set that alarm to give. So I'm going to move a little faster. So
No, go ahead, Tanya. Go ahead. finish your thought.
But I just want to go back to the fact that when you're writing a memoir and it's truthful, you've got to be willing to put the dirt out there. And if it's not something that's painful for you, sometimes you have to share, I guess, family secrets. You're going to be out there and family members are going to question whether or not that really happened, or they are in denial, because that's what happened to me. So I went through a lot to write this memoir. But for me, it was a healing journey and a truth that I had finally come to. So when we're writing that memoir and we want that engaging narrative, think about what you want people to take away. What do you want them to learn? Because my book, even though it was about a lot of pain, there was this journey that I was on. And that's why I say phenomenal beauty. It's a beauty that I learned that you can't get physically. It comes from within. And because I'm a spiritual person, it's my discovery of my internal being and my purpose for life. And that's where I began to flourish. And then with the telling of the truth, I had to go back to my mother. I had to go back and mend relationships. I had relationships with perfectly wonderful men that I sabotaged relationships because my fear, later I figured it out, it was the fear of them leaving me first, just like my dad abandoned me. I didn't know who he was. My mother dropped us off and left us. We ended up in foster care. My siblings at the time, it was 4 of us together. We learned about the other ones later. So during that time, I'm learning a lot about my family and about my strength. And so to go back to that beginning of that memoir and tying in, so this is the woman I am, I had to let them know this is my discovery of beauty. This is why it took me so many years to slowly uncover it over the years. But for me, it was about accomplishment. I felt that somebody instilled, if you go to college and you get an education, you don't have to worry about anything. I got that degree. But what I found is I was achieving success. My question is, once you get there, is this it? I became, got a degree. It was exciting. Then you start winning modeling competitions and that's exciting. But then you're like looking around going, there's no one you really love to share it with. And I remember a line in a Billy D. Williams, Diana Ross movie, I think it was Mahogany or Lady Sings the Blues, when she was drugged out and trying to be this fashion model. And Billy D. looked at her and said, life is nothing, or success is nothing unless you have someone you love to share it with. And so for me, my journey of self-discovery and getting to those places where I was all alone, I felt like I had to do that for me. But then I got to a place where now I want to bring people in. I want to teach what I'm learning. I want to help other people. So then I became kind of like a self-help engaged guru of learning and became obsessed with self-help because I wanted to see how other people overcame what they're or how they overcame certain things. And that's why reality show, I was the winner of one of the first top reality shows that didn't really get much publicity because it wasn't that much drama attached to it, called She's Got the Look. But for me, reality shows became popular, and I realized that because people are looking, thinking, I want to see how you're going to deal with that, because really it's kind of like me, and it's going to help me get to where I need to be. And so you're either going to get strung into their drama to see how your drama fits in, to see how you're going to end that, or you're going to get to a place where you realize you have totally nothing in common with that kind of drama because yours is different. So getting back to your memoir, as you're starting it out and you're trying to figure out how to be engaging and how to start that with either, giving them something that's engaging or something that's funny or leading them in, we just want to make sure that you're focusing on your relationship with yourself, but also the relationship with others, but you're going to tie in those factual accounts and those feelings. So we've talked about that enough, but it also should read like it's a novel, right? Because it's going to flow. Sometimes with a memoir, you have the opportunity, even though it's true, you can add in a little spice and flavor, right? And you have a little more flexibility than an autobiography or a biography, right? But you want to make sure that your scenarios and your dialogue is true, because you don't want any defamation lawsuits. You don't want family members coming back. Has anybody read the book or seen the movie Eat, Pray, Love by Elizabeth Gilbert? Did you love that movie? Janice, tell me why you did not like it.
No, it was just personal. I read the book and I didn't care about her enough. I thought she came, it's just me. She came across as very entitled. I couldn't relate to her and her struggles because they seem minimal compared to other people's struggles.
That's really good. I'm gonna plug my PC in. My battery plug is running low. Did like it or did like it and tell me why? Anybody else? I like what you said. I actually liked the movie, but I read a memoir that I met a woman was speaking, and I purchased her memoir because I was fascinated. And I, like you, I was disappointed because she was so privileged and that's all she talked about. And I wanted the dirt, but that's the kind of person I am. I want to relate to you because I've got so much dirt and baggage and dysfunction in my life. I want to see, how am I like you, right? And so she kept going and I kept following it because I'm like, there has to be more to this story, like you felt about her. And so I actually enjoyed reading the book, and I thought the movie was just slightly, a little bit different. But I like it when the authors give me something, right? So as you're writing, I want you to think about these things before you write. Think, and these are, can you see that? It says think, THINK, kind of like an acronym. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? And is it kind? Because even in telling your story, and even people hurt you, like even with my mother, and I hated her for a period of my life and I wish she were dead. There's some things that happen along the way in my spiritual awakening where I began to become curious about her life and how she ended up where she was. And that's how I ended up reconnecting with her. So even if you're telling that story about what happened, you can be pretty raw with it, but take it to a kind space or transition it out, because unless you just purposely want the readers angry with you and want them feeling some kind of way. Have you watched movies and you're just like hating that person? You're like, they're a great actor because I really hate them. And then when you see them in other movies, you're still hating them from a previous experience. So think, is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? And is it kind? And then key traits of a memoir, pretty much, we talked about the first person being you and telling this story. A memoir is usually a little less formal compared to biographies and autobiographies. They're narrow in scope of time, usually focuses more on the feelings and memories than facts, even though there are a lot of facts in there, but it's more about a feeling and a memory. And more flexible to change the story for the effect. So you have a little leeway to kind of guide that. So I'm trying to see, is there anything else? Oh, and then with the memoir that I wrote, it was also, I wanted to show my transformation. So in this story, I'm talking about various family members, various events, various things that's happening. I'm finally getting to a place where I realize that life really isn't about me and what didn't happen. And now that it's all out, everybody's got baggage and backstory. But for me, I wanted to offer my readers some kind of inspiration that if they looked at what happened to me, that they themselves can go to a place and heal from anything that had happened and to keep moving. And so I ended with the little story of the Wizard of Oz and Dorothy. I used to watch that as a kid, and I'm going to end my journey here, and then we're going to put up a little screen with some memoirs up, and then you can ask questions. But my, oh, shit.
I think we just lost Tanya. I think her battery died. But when we get back, she'll be back on. But I think she hit on, I'm just going to talk while she's plugging back in. Some of the impressions that I had from what she said was how it's not what you do, but how it impacts you in these stories. You know, I've talked to so many people who tell a great story, and you just listen to what they've been through. And just by listening to what they've been through, you're hooked. But then when you sit down to read 300 or 400 pages, that becomes not as interesting if you don't see how it impacts them and how it changes them. So I think, you know, a lot of people, well, not a lot, but some people could go through the same situation, but it's how it impacts them and how it changes them forever that makes it interesting and connects you. And I think in Tanya's memoir, and when she comes back on, hopefully, we'll talk to her a little bit more about how it changed her. And you see her as being such a put together, confident, energetic, role model. But when you hear some of the things that happened to her in the past, and you say, oh my God, how did she get from where she was to where she is? I think those are the things that make the memoir interesting. Okay, Tanya, we're back. I was recapping you while you were plugging back in. Okay, you're back, but you're muted.
I'm so
there you
sorry.
are. There you are.
To those warnings.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was just filling in while you were, I was recapping for you.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. So I guess we can lead into, and I was talking about the Wizard of Oz, just my story, my relationship. I felt like, okay, throughout my entire life, when I would watch the Wizard of Oz, it would make me think when Dorothy would click her heels and say, there's no place like home. My whole story, I guess my memoir, was about home and what home was as a child. And what I learned throughout my life was I was learning and yearning and yearning to go back home. I wanted to create in my mind's eye, in my environment, of what I wanted the home to be, the home that I never had. But yet it was really longing to go back, because I didn't learn conflict resolution. There was a lot of things I did learn, a lot of things I realized I didn't want, but there's something about a place called home. So when I would watch that, it made me think about, you know, you're faced with, there's a tin man, somebody needs courage, somebody needs a heart, you know, everybody's wanting something, and life promises you that there's going to be this wizard that's going to come and wave a magic wand and life's going to be wonderful. But for me, I had to take that journey down Oz to come to a realization that my inner being and beauty is my home, and that is my comfort zone. And the things that you learn about life, I wanted to tell that story, but I wanted to give my readers something to give them some hope. And my clicking of my heels and saying that there's no place like home is coming to a realization that, you know, there's a saying, what doesn't kill you will only make you stronger. And I'm a stronger individual. And then I do have some success. My greatest success is being married for 30 years. I wanted to break that cycle of defeat. My husband and I have been married 30 years. We've raised 5 amazing children. My daughter's married. I'm a grandmother now. My eldest son is in medical school, getting ready to do residency and become a doctor. My 24-year-old is a successful NBA player. My 22-year-old is graduating from West Point University in May. My youngest is playing basketball. So that part of my life and the drama that I caused them, and I could write another memoir about that later, but life has taken me to a place. And I thank you, Maddie, for the opportunity to share. And I thank you, Maddie, because of what you learned about me. You put me on a platform to help me realize that I am a gifted writer, but I kind of didn't own that. And because of the platform that you have given me and you're encouraging to me, continues my work and my purpose. And you kind of energized and fulfilled me in 2020. So meeting you was the best part of 2020 for me, because it elevated me and took me to a platform. And so if Diana, you want to put that little screen up, I was going to share just some memoirs and some stories that I think are amazing. So if you're trying to think about how to write and to have a guide, I would recommend. I don't know, has anybody read The End of Normal? I read that in 2012. It was one of the best books I had ever read. And I say that because Stephanie Madoff is the daughter-in-law of Bernie Madoff, who was involved in the Ponzi scheme and she was married to Mark, the son, that after Bernie was in prison for 2 years, ended up committing suicide. He hanged himself, and they had a small child. And so she told her story of what it was like being a Madoff and how exciting it was, but what happened after it was all exposed, because she didn't know. She had no idea. She was fooled like everybody else, but yet the audience and people that were hurt by him assumed that his entire family was in on it, and she wasn't, and she talked about that. So it's a fabulous, easy read, engaging. It gives some heart and some gut about her life. Memoirs of a Geisha. Have you guys seen that movie or read this book? Oh my gosh, that book, or that book is, to me, the books sometimes are always better than the movies, but it's really about a young girl who was taken away from her home and went into this geisha lifestyle, how they groomed her. And so she's telling the story about what she had to go through. And it reminds me a lot about my life, but in a different way. But it was all about beauty and the things that you had to do, but they did the things that they needed to do in order to, kind of like prostitution in a way, to be able to survive and have money and be with. And then if you have not seen Hamilton, the play, the Broadway play, When Things Open Up Again, I strongly recommend that you see that. The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks is a great story read, because it's about her. She had cancer, and her cancer cells were stolen without her knowing it. And her research and her DNA was used to come up with cures for a lot of medicines and various things that we have today. And she found out about it later in life. And really, really great read. Of course, Steve Jobs, we all know. Another really good book is this book. I'm trying to see the bottom of the screen. It's too big, but I do have a picture of it. I read the book years ago, and it's about the Kennedy daughter, this bottom left one, who she had a lobotomy that went bad, and they hid her and about her life. And yeah, I think it's called Rosemary. But that story was incredible, and I was amazed to learn that truth about the Kennedys, because they talk about them having that cloud of death, and this was kind of like the first piece of all the drama that their family endured, but why they hid her and what. But so somebody else is telling her story, but it's a very powerful story about back in the day, how we were all ashamed about dysfunction and how you didn't want anybody to know. And she was a hidden Kennedy daughter that nobody knew about. And then the book Becoming by Michelle Obama was a lot for me, kind of like your experience with Eat, Pray, Love, thinking I kept wanting some dirt and some more. And I think I enjoyed the experience because I got to meet Oprah and Michelle Obama in Chicago. So that's what happens when you have a famous son that plays in and that's a professional athlete, and you can get into places. But I ended up meeting them, and that experience was very rewarding. But her book, because of her popularity, though, really sold, and she had a strategic plan. So when it comes to marketing your book, another thing I want to add is decide what you want in the end. I kind of got what I wanted. It wasn't to be popular, a #1 seller. And there's ways that you can self-publish and ways that you can seek publishers. But Becoming Michelle Obama was a great read, but it wasn't like, oh my gosh. But she shared some light on some things of her childhood, which I thought were really important, especially something that I learned about, I think Dandy was her uncle, and why he had that mindset that he had. I'm always curious about how people can't shake certain things and why they stay so negative. So my aha was that. And then the fact that the second best piece in that book was about her mother, how every spring she'd get the Lysol and she's doing her cleaning. And then there was actually an episode or a moment where her mother talks about wanting to leave her father and why she didn't. But the fact that she was open about that, I thought, wow, I'm sure at some point in everybody's marriage, you're like making a plan to make an exit because things are happening, but realizing the bigger picture and staying together for the family. And then, of course, Elie Wiesel, who wrote about the Holocaust and various things. So those are all books. I put my little 3 ones up there, but Phenomenal Beauty, It's a Journey, Not a Destination is mine, and it's available on our Phenomenal Women's website. And so the books that I personally wrote and authored, we make them available through our nonprofit, because my gift to the organization that I helped found was to raise funds and give back the profit to the organization. So questions at this time, and then comments, and hopefully I've kind of shared what it was you were expecting or wanting, but if not, for your questions. And then for those of you that wanted some help that have not published, we've got a great website that we recommend with kind of 10 steps to think about before publishing and ways that you can go about getting that accomplished. They can help you write stories. There's ghostwriters, as you all know. There's a variety of different things that are available to you. So, questions?
Okay. Okay, so I have a few questions, and one is, I guess as I was listening to you speak, you know, when I think of a memoir, I think of somebody telling their story, but yours was an experience, you know, and I think I never really thought about the experience that a writer goes through writing a memoir, that is actually interactive, and that it does change the writer, that looking back in your life, that there's some sort of alchemy or process that happens when you think back in your life and you process it and you put it on paper and all of those things. I mean, you think about, like I said, telling a story is just a series of events. And then you think about somebody writing a book and, okay, yeah, this is what I did and this is what happened. But then you take it back another layer and how that affects the person who's telling the story. And the way you described this was so interactive and so energetic. It didn't feel like the memoir was you sitting back and watching something. It was that you're actually going through this and processing these emotions at the same time the writer is. So can you talk a little bit about what it was like for you to write this and to go through some of these experiences and to write about it, and how writing about these experiences in your life impacted you and maybe changed the way that you looked at things?
I would say writing it, it's really interesting because it's like, how do you pull the different chapters? Some people name them and then write. Some people write and then name. For me, it was thinking through, and because of that beauty pageant experience, I began to think through what were some pivotal moments for me. So my chapters came from thinking through those moments that were the toughest for me. So I had to go back and relive and to rethink some of the drama and the pain and the discomfort, people that I lied to, people that I wronged, people that wronged me and did damaging things. Like for the things that didn't have peace, I wanted to go back, write about it, but try to make an amends with those individuals to either get them the opportunity to forgive me or me the opportunity to forgive them. And with that, what I'm learning as an older person, a more mature person, is that you have to be detached from the outcome. Once you have that transformation, it's up to you to offer. It's up to them to accept. And they say that forgiveness or unforgiveness is like drinking poison yourself and hoping that the other person dies. It's like forgiveness is usually for yourself. And so when I'm writing, or when I was writing, when I'm thinking about each moment, at that point I had to be detached from what had happened, tell it as though I remember it to the best of my ability. And then, you know, it's really interesting, Maddie, I want to say on this call for the first time, my mother, because I reconnected with her in December, first time that all of my siblings were in the same room with my mother. She's drug-free. She's still alive. She's getting her life together. But what I found that this book was a continuation, because now I told the story, excuse me, from what I remember, but now I put it on my siblings because they're in the book. I wanted to know their perspective and what had happened. And based upon where they were emotionally in their life, they perceive things differently, and based upon personalities. So one of my sisters, you know, she's still having issues and drama. My brother and I, kind of, because we're the older two, kind of saw things the same way. But to hear everybody's different perspective, and even to have my younger brother still believe that I was never molested, but that doesn't bother me because that's his perception of my grandfather who molested me. So his image of what my grandfather was is in his head, and he can't accept the fact that he would do something like that. And he's like, I'm not calling you a liar, but I just don't believe that that happened. I'm like, okay. So to tell your story, I told it from my perspective, but now that I'm older, I'm going back and getting, not to say that what I told wasn't pretty accurate, it was, but to hear some other things. Does that make sense a little bit?
Yeah.
Just
No, it
going
does.
back in time. And sometimes it could be a smell in the kitchen. It could be music on the radio. As you know, music takes you to places and times. It could be a movie where somebody says something. So there's different things that took me to that. But it was an emotional journey. It was very emotional, and I was relieved that when it was done. And as you all know, as writers, you got to cut out a lot. You got to hopefully give the punch of what you want in that particular story. And then you've got to let it go. Just like movies, you leave a lot on the cutting edge and on the floor that could be continuations, but you have to do the best that you can and be okay with it.
Okay. And you said you wrote this when you were about 45, and I'm trying to age your kids at that point. Did you think about your kids reading the memoir and seeing this, and have they read it, and what was their reaction?
Great question, Maddie. Yes, I did, and I was a little like hesitant, but wanted them to read the parts about them moving to Orange County, behind the orange curtain, and what I was experiencing as a new young mother, which was different from my ghetto neighborhood of Detroit where I grew up. So that part I wanted them to understand. My son, who is a medical student at Emory in Atlanta, read the book for the first time last year. And then my son, who's at West Point University, read it maybe 2 years ago. He was the first one to read it. And he and I are so much alike. Oh my God, we clash continually. And then I said, when you graduate from high school, I'm gonna throw you the biggest going away party you've ever had. Because he was the one that was so much like me, that always questioned everything, that had something back. So when he read this story, he texted me and said, Mom, I just finished reading your book. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I had no idea that your life was like that. So, and they all knew that I had written a book, you know, in my experience, but so far only 2 of the 5 children have read it. And then my son that's in medical school, he mentioned, oh, I finished reading your book, but he never really said much about it. And when he told me that he was going to read it, because he had asked me to send it to him, I said, let's have a conversation when you're done. And so he didn't initiate the conversation. And when he was home for Christmas, I wanted to say something, but I didn't. But I think in time, I would like to have a conversation with him. And I look forward to my other children reading it, because I think it will give them some insight into why I was such a strong disciplinarian, why I'm very old militant growing up, where you don't talk back to parents. And even in Orange County, they have a different flavor because everybody else is doing it that way. So I was considered the mean mom, not very popular with my own kids, but yet seeing the accomplishments that they have, I think that upbringing and that strictness kind of added to that, and I look forward. So thank you for asking that question. Nobody has ever asked that before, but I look forward to my daughter, who's now married about 4 years and has her own child. I look forward to having a conversation with her and having her read the story.
Okay, you just gave me goosebumps thinking about that. But, and then as you were talking about the story, I know that it focuses a lot on your relationship with your mom, with your mother. Can you, when you were writing this book, had you reconciled with her at this point, or did that come after you wrote the book?
When I wrote the book, I had not, well, there's a part in there that I talk about our relationship and how it came about, because my front door just opened. That's weird. The wind blew my door open. But when I was writing it, I was in the process of making amends with her because she was absent for so long and out of my life. But then during this time, I became curious as to where she was, what she was doing. And so as I inquired, she was serving time in prison. And I had the opportunity, when she was up for parole, to offer her a place to stay. Because at that point, I thought maybe she's never had an opportunity, right? Maybe she was molested like I was. Maybe the drama in my life, because her parents raised me. And so I became curious, right? And so so we became pen pals. And by writing, it allowed me to ask questions about her life and how she ended up on drugs that I never would have had the courage to probably ask face to face. And so during the writing and the collect calls from prison, we began, and then there was an opportunity to have her paroled here against the parole officer's wishes, that they felt she was dangerous. Her rap sheet was too intense to bring her into my home with my small children.
Wow.
My son, who's at West Point now, I was pregnant with him, getting ready to give birth to my 4th child when she came to live with us. And she stayed with us for a couple of years, and she was getting her life together, and then went back home to visit that crowd again and got strung out again. So we were able to, and I was able to see her in a light that I'd never seen before. I began to love her as a mother because I saw certain traits. I thought it was really interesting while she was living with me, observing her mannerisms and her character. And I thought, oh my God, I didn't grow up around her, but we have so much in common. We clean the same way, we sweep the same, just certain things that she did. So I began to become fond of her and to love her in a way that I never had before. And I began to understand how she ended up where she is, and I began to have a love for her. And I had to ask for forgiveness. And so to answer your question, it all kind of came about at the same time. And I saw that she was really proud of my accomplishments, but I saw the guilt. She felt bad that she couldn't take credit. She felt bad that she wasn't a part of my life. She felt bad even though she was proud of the results that I had ended up with.
Amazing. Okay, we've got a couple of questions, Tanya. Jamie says,
Okay.
this was so helpful. Tanya, you are fascinating. I don't consider myself an interesting person. I've never done anything amazing, but I still feel compelled to write. Is it worthwhile if I'm not a successful, famous, etc.? That's a very honest question, Jamie. Thanks for sharing that with us.
That is. And Jamie, even though, like, for me, I didn't think my life was really, because it was so negative, right? So I didn't think there was anything exciting or anything anybody would want to know. But I think each of us has a unique purpose and a certain calling and certain things about you. Jamie, let me ask you this. Do you have friends?
Yes.
Miss Jamie?
Yes.
And they like you, right?
Yes.
And why do you think they like, why do they like you?
Because
What do you bring to the table?
I'm the stable one. I'm the reliable one. I'm the one they can always count on.
Okay, and with that, have you had friends with drama in their lives that they feel you're the anchor?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so with that stability, that's something that, you know, I wish I had, right? When I was growing up, that's something that a lot of people admire. So you can take that focal point of that characteristic, and then you can branch off to feed in other people's drama and how you bring that center and that stability to them and why do they come to you. So that's just what I thought of right off, but there's a lot of things that you can incorporate because it's about you, but it's about relationships, it's about places, it's about things, it's about people, it's about life. So think about your experiences with various people. Does that make sense? And is that helpful?
Yes, it does.
So even if you feel like you have no drama, I can guarantee you there's somebody somewhere that you're connected with that has some in their life.
Definitely.
And you can talk about that from that perspective.
Yeah, and I always wonder
And
what
you have
makes,
another.
yeah, and I always wonder, Jamie, what makes people that person, you know, they're so reliable all the time. So that's interesting too. Okay, Debbie wants to know, was your husband part of how and why you could break the generational dysfunction?
Oh, wait, who asked that question?
Debbie.
Debbie, that is a great question. I would say yes, he is, because my husband, and what really attracted, we met on a blind date, by the way. And what I loved about him was the fact that he was so different. He was the first person that didn't notice my physical scars. And if he noticed them, he never asked about them, right? It didn't even matter to him. So I felt that we connected spiritually. And his name is Charles, and Charles has always been consistent. Charles has always been non-judgmental. He's never said anything negative in the sense that would deter me. I'm all over the place. I love doing things. I have so many ideas. I try business things. I'm an entrepreneur. He's never said, like, why are you doing that again when that didn't work? He's always been kind of my rock and my support. And he was the most consistent, most loving, unconditional kind of a love that I could be me, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and not feel criticized for my moments of outburst or instability and things. And then when I brought to his attention of my plan of what I wanted to offer my mother, he was all for it. He said, if you're okay with it, I am too. So he's been amazing. And all my kids would tell you he's so easy to talk to because he's non-judgmental, and that's what I needed in my life. Was that. So that's a great question, and he's a key point. And I often say I'm still married because of him, not because of me.
Well, I think you have a lot to be proud of, so I don't think that's the case. Okay, so what can you tell us about your narrative voice? When you were writing this memoir, how did you come up? You have so many different aspects to your personality, and the memoir covers such a broad expanse of time. What voice did you write in, and did it change throughout the memoir? Did you write in the voice that you have now? Did you write it the voice in the voice that you had at the time, or a different voice that's even above where you are or different from where you are?
I think there were two kind of voices. I wanted to show the journey, the beauty journey, which started very insecure, and I think the insecurities and inconsistencies as a young girl of trying to find your voice and your place and who you are, but ending up with those physical insecurities of not feeling beautiful and not thinking I'm beautiful, but people that really didn't know me saw the beauty. You're tall, you're beautiful, you should model. That's how I got into the modeling industry, but I had so many things that held me back personally. But whatever you do, never let them see you sweat. And so I moved forward based upon the affirmations that people had told me. So that insecure voice was always there. So when I began to write, I wrote from a place of confidence and realization because I had been on a journey. And so that voice now was being okay with everything that wasn't okay earlier. So the voice was being able to say that I am this person and I've learned to love this person, but yet I want you to know the person that you see isn't the person that always was. And so I had to bring that voice of insecurity and all the pain and all the drama and all the hurt and disappointment. I had to bring that and kind of parallel it with the confident person now, but to tell that voice being that for me, it was a spiritual of not just me, but showing how those angels would show up at a time that was really key for me when I was at a fork in the road and not sure. And it comes with learning to trust your inner gut. But more importantly, trusting that even if what you're saying isn't received, you have to know that you did it in truth and in trusting that this is the road that you were supposed to take. Does that make sense?
It does. And I have a question. You know, when you look at, yeah, it does. It makes great sense. And so when you hear about where you started and people see how you are now, I mean, I don't know how anybody could not want to hear how that happened, but was there a turning point for you? Like one morning you woke up and said, I'm going to walk away from this, or I'm going to put this aside, or they can't, you know, keep me down? Or was there like that? Did you have a rocky moment? Or was this?
I had a moment. It's interesting. You're taking me back. Great questions, Maddie. You're good. So my aha moment of truth was when I was in a relationship with a guy. And it's funny, you mentioned Valentine's, your next event, but I was supposed to have had a Valentine's wedding. I met a guy, I was so in love with him, and we were going to get married, and I printed up invitations, and we were making plans, and he canceled on me. And it was interesting because that was the most painful experience of love that I just wanted, that I couldn't have. And his reasoning was, I love you enough to let you go. I don't think you're ready for this relationship. And it's like, how can you tell me this? Oh my gosh. And so even though all the plans have been made, I felt like I was left at the altar. And for me, that moment in time was when I had to go within, and because I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. If you've ever had a love life and it's gone sour and you still want the relationship, you know what that's like. And that's when I reached out to my boyfriend, ex-boyfriend at that time. His best friend was a woman that was amazing spiritually. And I was like, oh my gosh, and shared everything with her. And because she knew who he was, she began to take me to the Bible. And every time I asked a question, she wouldn't give me her feedback. She would give me a biblical perspective. And so that's what intrigued me to go within. And it took about 2.5, almost 3 years to finally get him out of my system. I left California, had to move to New York. I mean, it was like awful. I journaled about it. I still have to this day to open that journal and read it. I haven't, but I have it. But I want to go back and read it to see where I was and what I was thinking. But she really helped minister to me. And it was a scripture, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, that says, lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge me and I will direct your path. And I felt like that was my aha spiritual moment, that there are things that are going to happen that I can't control, but I have to trust at this point. I can't lean on my understanding in my head of what makes sense, but I have to take this path that is directing me to all things good, that's all things possible. So when I learned that lesson over time, that strengthened me, and that was the voice and the aha and the awakening for me that kind of propelled me into my beauty journey of accepting everything in life. But it took a long time.
When you read that journal and you write that book, when that time that you were journaling about that relationship and you write that book, will you come back and talk to us about that book?
I would love to.
Yeah, I think that would, I would buy 6 copies of that. Okay, so Tanya, where can people, I know you said that the proceeds or partial proceeds of your book go towards to the nonprofit, right? Or the phenomenal, right? What was it? The
Phenomenal Women. It's
Association.
Phenomenal Women Incorporated. It's a nonprofit organization for the empowerment of women, and we do seminars and workshops that relate in 5 specific areas. So we bring in speakers. So if there's anybody on this call that want to join us and talk about relationships, health and wellness, financial freedom, spiritual growth, or your vocation, we welcome. And we Zoom every first Friday. We call it Phenomenal Fun Friday at 5:30 Pacific Standard Time. We do a Zoom, and if you want to be on our mailing list, please send me your email. We'll log you in. The next one's on February 5th. And we actually have a guru, a health and wellness guru out of Atlanta, who has a Well Life Center, and she's talking about the benefits of intermittent fasting. But we have everything. This month we had somebody that did mindful meditations. So we have a variety of speakers. We do workshops, not just for women, but for men and families. And it kind of started out of my journey with mentoring young girls in pageants. And after they didn't win the crown, unlike me of having a realization that I did everything I can do and it's on you, it's your loss, not mine. These young girls are devastated because they were looking for a crown and banner to validate who they are. And then when they didn't get it, the cattiness came out, they changed. So then I began to say, where are these parents? Like, who are the mothers that are raising these children? And that's when the concept of Phenomenal Women came about, where we began to do workshops to help the inner woman. And now we include the entire family. And our mission is one woman, one home, one family, one community at a time. And we bring topics that the audience says that they want to hear, and we find the speakers. And so we went virtual in 2020 because we couldn't have the physical workshops. And so, and our hashtag is You Are Phenomenal. And phenomenalness means something different to everyone. And for me, a phenomenal woman is a woman that knows who she is in all her pain and everything, but is always open to the woman that she can become, because we're on a journey that's never ending. You know, it's a journey, not a destination, that I realize. So phenomenalwomeninc.org is our website, and you can go there and see how we were founded, what we do, what we provide, and it's a legitimate 501c3. And I'm shocked that I would birth something based on women when all my life I hated my mother, I hated my grandmother, I hated the women that stabbed me. You know, I hated life because girls were catty. But yet through my healing, I identify now with the broken homes and the broken women because I've had those experiences. And then I kind of plug them in to some self-help, so to speak, to kind of put them on that journey.
Well, I think that's a great place and a great message to end on. I want to thank you so much. Your books are available on Amazon, right?
Yes, on
Okay.
Amazon. And we prefer our website only because we get a bigger profit. You know, Amazon takes their cut. And I
Okay,
do
and you put
have
the
what's called
website-
UR.
I'm sorry.
I put it on, yeah, I can put it in the chat again, but our website also has a book that's called You Are Phenomenal, and it's actually a 30-day affirmation journey or journal, and it's to journal every day for 30 days to kind of get your own self-discovery and to help you, and it's kind of like a guide that teaches you how to get past your hurts, habits, and hang-ups. I'm typing in now the phenomenalwomeninc.org website. And it's the purple logo that says unite, empower, and inspire. That is our mission, to unite us as women and people, all backgrounds and nationalities and races, cultures, to unite, to inspire us to do something great, and to empower you, send you off to fulfill your purpose in life.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Tanya Hutchison. We appreciate your day, and I'm going to turn it back over to Larry.